I'd like now to welcome Mr. Peter Mathews, and I wish to advise everyone that we will receive opening remarks from Mr. Mathews, which will be followed by a question and answer session. And I'd request the members to be to the point in asking questions, and we have to finish or 3-ish around that time, so we haven't that much time. Okay, Mr. Mathews, the floor is yours.
Chairman. Thank you, members, for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I've circulated papers to you. The first batch of papers are the ones that took.
You can sit down if you wish.
Right. Well, I just stand for a moment. If I may.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. The first batch of papers include 3 ideas, essentially. The first is the recapitalisation schedule of the banks that are viable based on correct analysis of correct facts. And the second 2 papers are the suggested and the demonstrated least cost alternatives for respectively Anglo-Irish Bank and Irish Nationwide Building Society. I know that we're tight for time. I've heard that there is one of the 2 gentlemen tasked with the banking inquiry here in town, and that members of both houses wish to speak with him. That may be significant, because as a preference I would have liked that he could even be here for this meeting. It's unfortunate that we are pressed, that we're backstopped at 3 o'clock, because it's taken 5 years for the banking industry, in its totally deregulated and irresponsible mode, to lead the country to where we are now, in a state of financial devastation. And I think it is absurd that we would take a fast food approach to compressing time available to consider the important big picture things about this crisis. The crisis burst in 2008, September. Lehman Brothers was the biggest symptom of that bursting. But the creation of the financial meltdown in this country took 5 years to put together. We know very simply that the boards of banks abandoned their principles of banking. The fundamental tenet of the protection of a bank's assets, particularly and its liabilities, particularly its customers' deposits, depends on fractional reserving. That was abandoned. And 5 years of balance sheet examination proved that. And that in turn proves that all the directors of bank boards, as has been put forward by members of both houses here in Leinster House, should not remain in their positions if they have any integrity or any honesty. They completely caused financial and social wreckage for this country. And the question now is, and it was on the 28th of September, how do we measure it truthfully? How do we diagnose what should be done to correct it? And how we should plan based on that diagnosis? And what we got was a knee-jerk reaction, understandably, of a blanket guarantee. And that was okay as far as it went. But to extend it to a 2-year period and to do pretty well nothing in 19 months to date, and I mean nothing, even though NAMA has been brought through the legislature and is in position, it was the wrong diagnosis, the wrong strategy, and it should be reversed. But where the cardinal unacceptable strategy took place was in trying to tell the Dáil, the Seanad, the people and the President of Ireland that it was the only strategy available for the banks. It wasn't. And I'd like to refer you to one of the documents that came in the second batch of electronic postings. It was produced and presented on the next working day after the 16th of September. It shows an overview of the 6 banks and building societies owned by the Irish people, or the Irish markets. AIB, Bank of Ireland, Life and Permanent, Anglo, Nationwide, EBS, and there was a total column. And it took from the then available published accounts the meaningful information of those published accounts. And it presented a picture that presents the obvious solution to addressing the banking sector's problems. It is on one page. And what you members of both houses of the Oireachtas got when you had to make decisions about the future, the biggest ever financial project in this country, you got instead the supplementary financial information. This booklet, which is essentially a meaningless document, without responsibility, without accountability, expressly stated within the document. It contains 6 financial packages, each produced by the institutions that behaved recklessly. That wasn't even combined in an overview sense or a summary sense. And yet you, deputies and senators, passed the legislation that has now led us into what it can be only described as a mess, a financial mess. Because you were told by independent experts and analysts who did take a look at the truth and the facts, who did assemble them together, who did present the picture, that you didn't, at least the Department of Finance, didn't even want to discuss it. And I know that from at least 8 of the prominent independent analysts who generously gave of their time because they knew we were in a financial crisis, a financial Dunkirk. And despite physical and telephone approaches to the Department of Finance to discuss the problem back in September, they were always too busy. It's unbelievable. And it remains that way to this date. Under the camouflage of the Lisbon Treaty referendum, when the whole country went into a tizzy about that, this legislation chugged its way through under a propaganda PR machine that said it was the only show in town. What a cheap shot phrase to even use. Pathetic.